Welcome back, pro wrestling fans. Welcome back, IWC. It's your old buddy, the Guardian of Chaos, Big Daddy, and I tell it like it is. I'll say that to say this. Coming to you live to tape 25 feet below the surface of the earth, here for another special edition of Story Time with the GOC. That's me, here on Guardian of Chaos, the YouTube channel for Chaos Corner. Sit back and relax. We're heading into an unbelievable weekend. Stay mentally, physically, emotionally, and spiritually fit. Surround yourself with like-minded people. Situational awareness is the key to life. Shout out to our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ, because if He's for us, nobody else can be against us, especially here in 2024, in this day and age, and what's happening in everything from the government and political arena, to the environment, to wars, to the border invasion, to the economy, and everything else you could think of. And that's why I'm here, for a much-needed distraction in the insanity of the United States of America and around the globe. A stress reliever, not only for you, but for me as well. You come here to learn things, to get facts, to get history, not just opinions and viewpoints. So when you go to your next barbecue, or to the pool, or to work, the water cooler, the pub, the tavern, a venue, an event, wherever it is that you end up, that you can have a conversation, a normal conversation where you can communicate with people about knowledge and wisdom. And that's why you're here. In order to get respect, you have to start with respecting yourself. Once you do that, you open other people's minds to respecting you. And remember this, there's three types of people in this world. Those who don't know what happened, those who wonder what happened, and people like you and the GOC that make things happen. So sit back and relax. School is in session. Story time on Chaos Corner. Blood, sweat, and tears. Now remember, fans, I am reading along with this for the very first time, along with you. And I can't thank my channel subscribers and all my followers and members and people that are on this channel. I can't thank you. Much love and respect, more than I can say. I'm not going to give the usual shout outs. You know who you are. And for those of you that are unsubscribed, but I know you're watching, I don't know what you're doing. Really? Anyone? Bueller? Bueller? I don't know why you're here. If you're not subscribed, tap that bell, go to the community page, leave a comment, email me, inbox me, do something. Hello? Anyone home? McFly? I'm just saying. Sit back and relax. The love for professional wrestling combined with enormous financial burdens propelled Ric Flair into a more active role in a major American promotion in 2010. Here in the time machine on Chaos Corner. He joined Hulk Hogan and Eric Bischoff in TNA, a promising organization with a prime weekly cable outlet on Spike TV. TNA was looking for a breakthrough moment, and the promotion received a time slot opposite the WWE's Raw, rekindling the Monday Night Wars. Flair's role was initially as an observer, and he soon became a mentor to wrestling prodigy AJ Styles. He expanded his stable, adding Robert Roode, James Storm, and Desmond Wolfe, and later dubbed the group Fortune. At the Lockdown pay-per-view on April 18th, Team Flair was defeated by a squad led by Hogan, consisting of Abyss, Rob Van Dam, Jeff Jarrett, and Jeff Hardy. Flair feuded with Jay Lethal, a talented competitor with an uncanny ability to imitate the Nature Boy. During one particular TV segment, Lethal did his whole impression as Flair got more and more steamed in the ring. The comical scene included a classic back and forth of Flair's famous "Woo!" Contracted to make 65 appearances a year, Flair was a fixture on the weekly telecast, and his enthusiasm was always apparent. His old rival, Mick Foley, joined him to renew their past feud, and they were never at a loss for words as they delivered memorable promos hyping their last man standing bout on October 7th. That match was a stark deviation for Flair, particularly after it descended into a straight hardcore contest with an assortment of weapons. Foley, who was bleeding from a previous wound minutes into the battle, took a baseball bat wrapped in barbed wire to the forehead of his 61-year-old opponent. That was how old Flair was then, 61. What is he now, in his middle 70s? And Flair was soon gushing as well. At one point, Flair took a big bump off the stage through a table, and another spot saw Flair jump off the top rope onto his rival, sending them both through a table in the ring. At the end, Flair struggled to get up and did his face flop onto thumbtacks that littered the mat, giving Foley the victory. The spectacle had to be seen to believe. Bear with me, fans, as I get tongue-tied with my linguistic skills. And you know you like it when I get tongue-tied. Flair was affiliated to TNA for the next 18 months. The road was bumpy at times, and both injuries and internal disputes at the promotion over money made things difficult, as we're all going through hard times.
Did you know Amazon Music has more than just music?
Already? We're 7 minutes in here and I already got heat with this fucking bitch. You know I have this every time here. I have heat. I don't like her. I can't stand her, but it's the only sound system I have right now. You know this isn't shtick, right? This is part of the gimmick. I really don't like her. You know her name. But if I say it, should I say it? Oh, we're only 7 minutes in. Alexa, play tropical beach sounds. Now she's going to talk back to me.
Here's a station based on wonderful tropical beach sounds by Deep Sleep.
I really don't want to go to sleep. Holy moly. Where were we? I'm sure we'll get interrupted again. For my normal fans that are here, you know that I go back and forth with her all the time. Oh. All right, fans, let's focus. Focus, Chaos. Focus. In the midst of that run, Flair wrestled one of his greatest opponents, Sting, during September 15th, 2011 edition of Impact. The two had wrestled their first match 23 years earlier at a house show in Charlotte in December 1987, and only a few months later, Flair had made Sting a national star at the inaugural Clash of the Champions. Even though the match was physically slower than earlier encounters, the intensity and psychology remained, and their history made it a special occasion. You fans know I talk about it all the time. Emotional investment, ring psychology, storytelling. A lot of that does not translate to today's product in 2024. And that's just the facts. You don't have to be an insider, someone who was in the business that took the fucking bumps to understand that. If you're knowledgeable and educated and watch the product, and you're not a shill, a geek, a dweeb, a nerd, a neckbeard, a mouth breather, and all this dumb tribalism, which we used to call fandom, then you can understand today's product. I mean, this is not rocket science in 2024. No offense, man. What I say? Kayfabe, man. Where was I? Flair went through his well-known repertoire, using everything from the low blow to his figure four leg lock. He was caught, as he often was, trying to jump off the top rope, and he ably moved when Sting attempted a splash in the corner, but Sting landed a huge superplex, recovered from being hit with brass knuckles, and forced Flair to submit to his scorpion deathlock. Flair suffered a defeat and a serious injury to his arm in the process. Now remember where we are here. They started their first match in 1987. Here we are in 2010 and 2011. So we're going forward to go back and back to go forward here in the time machine on Chaos Corner. Coming up on episode 400. I believe I'm 1 or 2 shows away from episode 400 of Chaos Corner. Let that marinate. Let that sink in. Put that in your pipe and smoke it. Despite the pain and what was believed to be a broken bursa sac in his elbow, Flair was optimistic and upbeat. I feel great, he told a reporter. The following week, he went up to Boston to surprise the Red Sox second baseman Dustin Pedroia in the clubhouse prior to a game against the Baltimore Orioles. Pedroia was a big fan of Flair and was known for hanging an autographed Flair robe above his locker. Flair presented Pedroia with a TNA championship belt, and his visit drew a lot of attention from players and team personnel. The players were awesome, Flair said afterwards. They were all so respectful and nice. The admiration for Flair was plentiful among professional athletes. And Flair extended his friendship to guys like Jim Harbaugh, Kevin Green, Mike Rucker, and Charles Barkley. In January of 2014, Harbaugh, who was the head coach of the San Francisco 49ers, invited Flair to deliver a pep talk to his squad on the eve of their NFC wildcard game against Green Bay in Wisconsin. The added motivation from Flair helped propel the 49ers to a victory 23-20. Interestingly, beginning with the Carolina Panthers and continuing with teams at all levels of sports, a post-game ritual invoking the name, spirit, and flamboyance of Flair became increasingly popular in the 2010s. The 2 claps and a Ric Flair, as it was known, was devised as part of a victory celebration, and teams used a custom, including the famous woo as they rejoiced. Sergio Brown, a safety for the Indianapolis Colts, added a unique spin to the tradition by quoting from Flair's renowned Rolex-wearing, diamond ring-wearing promo, and the entire routine was very entertaining. Flair had received great respect from his professional contemporaries in other sports throughout his career. And in 2012, he received a powerful acknowledgement from the then 3-time NBA MVP, LeBron James. Remember, fans, I'm reading this for the very first time along with you. So bear with me. I greatly appreciate that. All chicanery aside, when I was a kid, I loved wrestling, James explained. Flair was one of the guys I loved, too. I think he's probably one of the creators of what we call swag these days, with the Rolexes and the stretch limos and all the girls and all that stuff. He's like the creator of swag. Ric Flair definitely kept me watching TV, to quote LeBron James. While still employed by TNA, Flair got word that the WWE wanted to make him the only individual to be inducted into the Hall of Fame twice. This time around, he would be enshrined as part of the Four Horsemen, and Flair was thrilled. Being inducted once was one of the greatest accomplishments of my career. So I'm humbled and honored to be recognized again, Flair said in a statement. TNA and the WWE came to a mutual, agreeable deal permitting Flair to rejoin his old colleagues on WrestleMania weekend to take part in the ceremony. Eric Bischoff, whose hot and cold relationship with Flair went back more than a decade, was more than supportive of this recognition. Ric Flair is a very special individual in this business, he told VOC, Volk Nation Wrestling Radio. He's done some amazing things. He's not flawless. He's not perfect. He's not anything like that. But there is no one in this business that deserves that respect and the honor, quite frankly, of taking center stage on the biggest event in our universe, compared to what Flair's doing now in 2024 at the pizzeria and being inebriated all the time, and people want to make excuses for him, and he's Ric Flair, and that's Ric Flair, and he's the legend. That's all well and good, but respect people. Treat people how you want to be treated. Stop trying to use your celebrity and star status, Flair. You're ruining your reputation. And like I said 10 minutes earlier, in order to get respect, you have to start with respecting yourself. Once you do that, you open other people's minds to respecting you. So for a man that had all the respect throughout his career, as you can hear me reading right now, He's kind of losing it right now, currently. And that's a sad state of affairs. And you know I give you the good, the bad, and the ugly here on Chaos Corner. That's why you're here. My over 50 years of being a historian, a researcher, a scout, an agent, a producer, a fan, a smart, a mark! That's right, I said a mark. And my over 3 decades in this fucking business as a pro wrestling manager who took the bumps! Came out 2 and 3 times a night on every event and venue with my squad. My stable. And now I'm interrupted again by this bitch. You see how pissed I get? And I apologize for all this. But this is what you get here on the show. Alexa, play Tropical Beach Storms and stop interrupting me.
Play a specific song with an Amazon Music Unlimited free trial on this Echo.
I don't want that.
It's free for 30
That's not what I
days and
want.
$5
I'm trying to talk about Ric Flair.
Cancel. Terms in the Alexa app.
Alexa.
Should I start your free trial and play Tropical Beach Storm?
No. Play Tropical
Okay.
Thunderstorm
I can play
sounds.
similar music instead for free. Here's a mix based on Tropical Beach Storm by Silent Nights on Amazon Music. Sorry, I can't reach Amazon Music right now.
I hate this bitch. And I don't like to use that phrase.
1 gram of sugar.
You never know what's going to happen here. One man, unique, unscripted, live, unedited. That's what you get. Raw dog for you, the fans. Alexa, play Tropical Thunderstorm sounds. I guess we'll switch it up. You never did this. See, this is why there's no paywalls and Patreons or any of that baloney. Garbage. This is what you get. Like I said, one man, unique, unedited, unscripted, raw dog for you, the fans. As I was talking about my over 3 decades in this business as a pro wrestling manager who took the fucking bumps. And I know I'm repeating myself. But I keep getting distracted by this bitch. No offense, man. Just bear with me. Stay with me. This is the entertainment value that you get here on Chaos Corner. I apologize. We were back to Ric Flair being inducted into the WWE Hall of Fame while he was a part of TNA, going in for the second time as a part of the Four Horsemen, as we're 17 minutes in here. All right, here we go. Focus, Chaos, focus. On March 31st, 2012, at the American Airlines Arena in Miami, Dusty Rhodes, the arch enemy of the legendary Four Horsemen, inducted Flair, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Barry Windham, and James J. Dillon into the WWE Hall of Fame. It was another landmark occasion, and Flair received his second gold ring. In the weeks that followed, Flair's status within the TNA changed, and he was officially released from the organization on May 11th. Reports initially circulated that Flair had skipped out on several TNA dates between May 10th and May 15th. And that he was trying to get out of his contract to jump back to the WWE. But that information didn't jibe with the timing of his release. And the WWE indicated that it had made no offer for Flair's return. Nevertheless, Flair was done with TNA, and his schedule was wide open for indie appearances, conventions, and autograph shows. And as I said all the time, and I'll say it again, the independents are the backbone of this business. That's where everyone starts unless you're already a talent from another sport. And that's where everyone goes back to get a payday. It's literally like, especially here in the last handful of years and moving forward, like a territorial system back to the 70s and 80s of pro wrestling. Don't forget that. Support independent pro wrestling. That's what makes all these stars. And I can vouch for that from my home at Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling with the Paradise Four, who worked under the guidance of the WWF and WCW. Pretty Paul Roma, Mario Mancini, Mr. Paul Perez, and Big Steve Tracy, a.k.a. Dave Paradise. Paradise Alley Pro Wrestling on all social media platforms. And the Hey Roma podcast. Is there an echo in here? Hello? Maybe. During the second week of August 2012, Flair ventured to Cave In Rock Illinois, to perform as a host at the 13th annual Gathering of the Juggalos Festival. What a joke that was. He was forced to depart early after the crowd began throwing bottles at the stage. Flair made his long-awaited return to the WWE on December 17th at Raw in Philadelphia in a surprise appearance. From the stage, he presented the Superstar of the Year Slammy Award to John Cena. Cena graciously accepted the award, but he turned around and gave it to Ric Flair before leaving the stage. With a major bone to pick, CM Punk and Paul Heyman confronted Flair, and Punk criticized both the Nature Boy and Cena, reminding everyone that he had been the WWE champion for 393 days. See how everything comes full circle? History repeats itself, whether it be in the world, the Bible, the empires, or pro wrestling. Pay attention. Flair was unimpressed. He took off his coat and walked to the ring to face the hobbled Punk, who was on crutches, and his manager. But Punk used one of his crutches to knock Flair to the mat, and he had the upper hand. Sly as usual, Flair resorted to his dirty tricks and poked Punk in the eye. Say that 3 times fast. Poke Punk in the eye, poke Punk in the eye, poke Punk in the eye. He proceeded to put Heyman in the figure 4. If I die, I want to die right here or with a woman from Philly, Ric Flair told the crowd a moment later. He's trying to do that, isn't he? He's trying to die in a ring, isn't he? He won't accept Roman's challenge, though, you coward. I'm just saying, man. Flair's participation on Raw continued as he found himself face-to-face with the members of The Shield. He received some timely help from Kane, Daniel Bryan, and Ryback, and he celebrated after fending off the attack. It's notable that earlier in 2012, shortly after WrestleMania, Flair's daughter Ashley decided to enter the wrestling business, and she traveled to Tampa to begin training under Steve Kern. That's right, Ashley. Charlotte Flair. Hello? With tremendous athletic ability, Ashley made remarkable progress, and she was added to the NXT Divas roster by August. She was also given the ring name Charlotte as a tribute to her hometown. As for Flair's son Reed, he was still improving as a wrestler and was slated to travel overseas with his father in January 2013 for a tour of All Japan Pro Wrestling. Konnichiwa, bitches. Arigato from the Chaos-san. In fact, the elder Flair was scheduled to lace up his boots to participate in a tag match on January 26th in Ota, Japan. When he was sidelined by a blood clot in his leg, Reed took his place, teaming with Kenji Muta in a loss to Tatsumi Fujinami and Seiya Sanada. While his son Reed remained in Japan for a series of matches to gain further experience and confidence in the squared circle, Flair returned stateside and was very busy with a number of appearances. During the week of February 14th, he filmed an episode of Celebrity Wife Swap. How about that? For a future broadcast on the ABC network, his partner on the telecast was Wendy Barlow, known in the wrestling world as Flair's French maid, Fifi, from 20 years earlier, their employment with WCW. In recent months, Flair and Barlow had rekindled their friendship and formed a relationship. Barlow was the mother of 4 children, including Sophia Kidder, an actress who appeared in 6 episodes of The Walking Dead. Celebrity Wife Swap had participants spend the week with a different family, usually presenting a clash of lifestyle and culture. That certainly was the case as Flair traded places with his longtime friend and former ring rival, Roddy Piper, to spend the week in the Pacific Northwest. Now, fans, go out and DuckDuckGo it. Don't Google it. Don't go Google it. Use DuckDuckGo. It's a better search engine. It's more privacy. How about that? Any of you remember Celebrity Wife Swap with Flair and Piper? Unbelievable. History here on Chaos Corner. Flair was booked for an appearance on March 25th, 2013. An edition of Raw from Philadelphia, but he wasn't able to perform due to continued problems with the blood clot in his leg. He went home to Charlotte for treatment, and he was expected to make a few dates the following weekend in Maryland. Having concluded his 2-month tour in Japan, Reid Flair had also returned to Charlotte and soon joined his father at his hotel, the Residence Inn off Fairview Road in the South Park area of the city. The 25-year-old had never looked happier. According to a report in the Charlotte Observer, he had planned to travel with his father to Maryland in just a few days. Tragedy struck instead. On the morning of Friday, March 29th, Reid was found unresponsive in his hotel room. Emergency personnel tried to revive him, but their efforts were unsuccessful, and Reid Flair was declared dead. A medical examiner's autopsy later determined that Reid had died of accidental heroin toxicity. Rest in peace, Reid Flair. We are heartbroken to confirm that Rick's son, Reid Flair, has passed away, a statement from Flair's agent, Melinda Morris Zanoni, said. Reid was 25 and an incredible son, brother, friend, and professional wrestler. No words can describe the grief that Rick and his family are experiencing, and they do request privacy during this devastating time. The sadness following his death extended to the far reaches of the wrestling community, and people were gutted by the news. In recent years, Flair had discussed the death of his son on a variety of platforms, including in his second autobiography, Second Nature: The Legacy of Ric Flair and the Rise of Charlotte, which was released in 2017. And he candidly shared the harrowing pain of loss with his legion of supporters. And I could support that harrowing loss and how that feels to lose a child. Because in 2015, I lost my oldest daughter to a lifelong illness, who never walked or talked a day in her life. She was wheelchair bound, needed 24-hour care. It gutted me, it crushed me, and it does to this day. But thanks to my Lord and Savior and my faith, I consider myself to be blessed. And I'm very humbled as I open up here honestly about my personal life and the loss of my oldest daughter. So I can relate to this, and this is why I'm reading this story. Letting you fans inside my heart, my mind, my soul, as we relive Ric Flair losing his son, Reid. He also provided insight into Reid's private struggle, and Flair never held back. His candor to speak of the relationship he shared with the greater public and his honesty was something he had maintained his entire career. Taking all of his interviews and books into consideration, it's hard not to acknowledge him as one of the most revealing, outspoken, and expressive athletes of all time. The tears at the Hall of Fame, on Raw, in interviews, and at WrestleMania were all real. The blood spilled in the 1970s, 80s, 90s, and 2000s was all real. The hours of wrestling matches from the parking lots of auto dealerships to the Tokyo Dome saw Flair give everything he was worth in the ring, and his sweat stained many wrestling mats. Ric Flair had given just about every ounce of himself to the public, and it's difficult to find another athlete in the wrestling world even remotely comparable. Maybe Dusty Rhodes, a few others. Flair never shied away from discussing a subject and was forthright about his divorces, his money problems, and his opinion on all things pro wrestling. Where it became incredibly delicate was when Flair discussed his children and how he feels his own decision-making and just how his conduct has affected to them. And I wish he would go back and reread this himself to see what's happening to him personally here in 2024. And I'm just being as honest as I can. That's what you get here. I tell it like it is. It's not just a moniker, it's a way of life for me. The emotion was so very real. Following Reed's passing, Flair endured some hard times. Physically and mentally. He reportedly spent a month in the hospital treating his blood clot before he relocated to the Tampa area to live with his close friend, Joe Gomez. That gave him the opportunity to watch Ashley's training. He traveled to Los Angeles in August to take part in promotional symposium to discuss the upcoming WWA 2K14 video game release. Despite Flair's innate ability to be charming and tell stories, WWE officials were not entirely pleased with how the event was handled. As a result, Flair was reportedly removed from a spot at SummerSlam, and contractual talks about more regular positions at the company broke off. Jim Ross, the host of the symposium, was ushered into a hasty retirement as well. However, Flair was back in the good graces of Vince McMahon by the summer of 2014. And he made a big appearance at Madison Square Garden on July 12th. He interacted with Triple H and Bray Wyatt, rest in peace, Wyndham Rotunda, even throwing a few punches the latter's way before John Cena beat Wyatt to retain his WWE Championship. I know I said Cena. It was Cena, I know. I'm reading this for the first time. Cut me some slack, man. Cena, who had recently won his 15th world title and was on the brink of tying Flair's record 16, respectfully addressed Flair after his victory. To quote John Cena, "I don't give a damn how many times I had this," he told the Garden audience. "This would just be leather and gold if there was no Nature Boy Ric Flair." He then called Flair the greatest of all time. He's on my Mount Rushmore, Ric Flair. Ric Flair, Dusty Rhodes, Bruno Sammartino, and Hulk Hogan. Just for his mere impact on how he changed the business. That's my Mount Rushmore. In subsequent months, Flair was active on television and on the road, and he performed as a guest referee for matches featuring Roman Reigns in Australia during August. Several weeks later, he returned to the hospital for a series of surgeries, including an intestinal operation and an appendectomy. In true Flair fashion, he recovered more quickly than expected and was released from the hospital 2 days earlier. He was back performing his duties in WWE rings by December. Going into 2015, which seems like a lifetime ago, in 2015, as I said earlier, was perhaps the worst year of my life, losing my daughter and my mother within 3.5 months of each other. So I remember it vividly, fans. Wow. Flair continued to make sporadic appearances for the promotion, mainly on big occasions, and turned up at a special Hulk Hogan Appreciation Night at Madison Square Garden on February 27th. Along with other Hall of Famers, he participated in a backstage segment at WrestleMania 31 in Santa Clara, California, and celebrated the Intercontinental title victory of Daniel Bryan. On May 6, 2015, the initial episode of Woo Nation, a new podcast program hosted by Flair and Conrad Thompson, made its debut on the CBS Radio Playlist Network. Kurt Angle, the acclaimed Olympic gold medalist, was the first guest, and over the following weeks, the likes of Mick Foley, Bret Hart, Terry Funk, Steve Austin, and Jim Cornette were interviewed. And out of those 5 names that I just mentioned, I worked professionally with 4 of them. And that's why you're here. How many other people in this community, this space, can say that? That's why this channel is no better, but it's unique in itself. And I'm proud of that. The conversations were absorbing, and the shrewd perspectives and opinions on historical events made it mandatory listening, much like here on Chaos Corner. No, I'm not comparing the two, but you get it. On June 11th, 2015, the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, passed away in Orlando, Florida. Rest in peace, Dream. I'll never forget meeting you and being able to talk to you and you listening to me and let me pick your brain, not only at ECW and when I was trying to get booked by you for Turnbuckle Championship Wrestling. I'll never forget it, Dream, and I'll never forget you. He was 69 years old. Rhodes had been an early influence on Flair dating back to the early 1970s. As Flair rose in prominence, a sharp competitiveness between the two men manifested, leading into challenges in their personal and business relationship. In the ring and behind the microphone, Flair and Rhodes brought out the best in each other, and the ongoing feud between Rhodes and the Four Horsemen was a hot point during the heyday of Jim Crockett Promotions. No better times in this industry. Despite all their hostilities, there was an equal amount of respect and friendship, and they were close in recent years. Flair always recognized Rhodes' importance, and in 1987, he told a reporter, and I quote, "Dusty Rhodes has had a great impact on our sport. He was the first cable star, and it opened up a lot of doors." At the end of July, Flair suffered loss again when his friend of over 30 years, Roddy Piper, passed away in California. Rest in peace, Roddy. The Rowdy Scott was only 61, which I'm vastly approaching this year. The bond between Flair and Piper formed when they were both young men at the outset of their careers in the Mid-Atlantic region, and it continued in the WWF and WCW and well into retirement. The lightheartedness in their appearance on Celebrity Wife Swap was a testament to their enduring friendship. Flair traveled to Oregon and was a speaker at Piper's funeral. Ashley Flair's growth as a professional wrestler was extraordinary. She was a natural in many respects, much like her father had been, and was destined to be a world-class second-generation star. On September 20th, 2015, Charlotte used her Figure 4 variation submission hold called the Figure 8 to force Nikki Bella to concede, and she won her first WWE Divas Championship women's title, we'll call it. In interviews, Flair expressed his delight in her success, calling her victory for the Divas belt the proudest moment of his life. The night following her win on Raw, Charlotte and Flair shared a special moment in the ring, and the emotion was palpable. Charlotte's meteoric rise coincided with a women's wrestling revolution in the WWE, and along with Becky Lynch, Sasha Banks, Natalya, and other talented athletes, the entire culture shifted from gimmick matches to incredible main event caliber spectacles. The action was often more enjoyable than matches featuring their male counterparts. Now, I don't know if I agree with that. It's just my opinion, although it's come a long way, especially now in 2024. Flair soon joined Charlotte as her second, interfering in matches to ensure she'd keep her title. Charlotte also used tricks from the Nature Boys' villainous playbook, adding another dimension to her already versatile repertoire. At WrestleMania on April 3rd in Arlington, Texas, Flair's assistants played a big role in Charlotte's victory over Lynch and Banks, allowing her to become the inaugural WWE Women's Champion. Now, do you think Mercedes Moné, right now in 2024, and AEW, the former Sasha Banks, will ever do or accomplish or could complete anything else like this ever in her life? You made a fucking mistake, Monet. I'm just saying. Follow the Monet? Really? You were already making enough and you were a legend in the other company. Where are you now? I'm just giving it to you real. This is history, and this is why you're here. You learn facts. It wasn't that long ago, although it seems like a lifetime since what's happened in this world since 2020. Flair was in her corner at Payback on May 1st in Chicago, and he found himself face-to-face with his old ring nemesis, Bret Hart, who was supporting his niece, Natalya. After a controversial finish, which saw referee Charles Robinson call for the bell just as Charlotte applied the sharpshooter, in a recreation of the 1997 Montreal Screwjob, Hart and Natalya placed that same hold on both Flair and Charlotte to gain a measure of vengeance. Later that month, in an angle on Raw, Charlotte publicly berated Flair and announced that she was going forward without him by her side. All things in pro wrestling eventually cycled back around. As I previously stated, hello, McFly, that's why you're here. And Charlotte and Flair were apparently about to make up in November 2016 when she swerved the viewing audience and slapped her father. It wasn't the reunion many people were hoping to see. Flair was honored by the WWE on March 30th, 2017 at the Access event prior to WrestleMania 33 in Orlando. The promotion unveiled a bronze statue of Flair in a special ceremony attended by Flair, Wendy Barlow, his children, and other wrestling dignitaries that included Ricky Steamboat and the Rock and Roll Express. Triple H, who revealed the sculpture, told Flair, and I quote, "Over the years, you have gone from being my hero, my inspiration, to one of my best friends. This is about one thing, and it's about the one thing you're about. And that one word is always and will be for you," and something that we take seriously here on Chaos Corner: respect. For good reason, respect was very important to Flair, and he always appeared to respect the people who respected him. Those who spent time with Flair understood that alcohol was a big part of his life. Flair liked to work hard and party hard, and he subscribed to the belief that the otherworldly effort he gave to wrestling allowed him to let down his hair and enjoy life. His drinking was discussed in his 2004 autobiography, and allegations of excessive use as well, were mentioned in court documents. We all have our demons. You learn to control them and get over them, hopefully. In Jesus' name, amen. In interviews, Flair never avoided talking about his penchant for the nightlife, and he was attracted to the social culture of high-end bars around the world. Admittedly, he had several dark periods in which his drinking was heavily particular following the death of Reed. And as you heard me mention earlier, I can vouch and attest to that in the death of my oldest daughter. And me, myself, being as honest and open as I can right here, crawled up inside a bottle myself for a while. And thankfully, I'm much better at this point in my life. That's why I chose to read this chapter of blood, sweat, and tears, and the similarities that occur in people's lives. I drank myself to death for a year, he said. 10 o'clock in the morning to 2 o'clock at night. It's the only way I could get away from it. Flair hadn't been acquainted with the word moderation, but despite the extreme prevalence of drugs around the business, he never went in that direction, and I'm thankful I never did either. He didn't need them, and he lived the rock and roll lifestyle in his own inimitable fashion. For all the years he was the NWA champion and represented the Alliance on a global scale, he partook in the pleasures of being on the road, and he found a balance between being a party animal and a respectable professional. Across the millions of miles he traveled, the scores of late-night establishments he frequented, and the claim that he had encounters with 10,000 women. Wow. Flair never drew negative publicity or embarrassed the business until recently, and I'm just telling it like it is. I'm not judging. Who am I to judge? Who the fuck am I? I'm not judging. I'm just presenting the facts as we know them, and I know them now to be. No judgments. Flair never drew negative publicity or embarrassed the business. I just said that. In fact, there were no stories of improprieties or scandals during his time as champion. Harley Race, who wasn't the kind of man to compliment someone unless they truly deserved it, called Flair a class act. And the regard for Flair as a person was shared by individuals inside and outside of the business. That's why I say Flair right now is damaging his lifelong reputation. I'm just saying. Even with those he met at autograph signings, airports, or elsewhere in his travels, he attempted to put his best foot forward. Again, what I just said, and what's recently happened with Ric Flair over this last, we'll say, 5 years. Event after event of behavior that, according to what I'm reading here, wasn't really prevalent at the time. Again, I'm not judging. I'm just giving it to you the real. Raw dog! Let me see if I'm going to do this into a part 1 or a part 2. I don't think so. I think we're going to go about an hour. We're 45 minutes in here, so I hope you stay for the whole entire show here on Story Time. Because this isn't a podcast. This is a show. Reality. That being said, he was a human being. As a top athlete in a high-profile position, he was aware that the eyes were constantly on him, and there was no way to please everyone. All celebrities have to deal with that reality. In professional wrestling, the backstage competitiveness over money and political power made conflict common. And Flair saw his relationships with some wrestlers transform after he became a booker in WCW in 1989. Blame for booking decision and changes were laid at his feet, regardless if he made the final call or not. When he made an effort to protect his reputation and stature in the business, there was backlash. And there was perception that he held younger wrestlers back by constantly being in the main event picture. But the truth was, promoters needed him on top because at times he was the only wrestler bringing in ratings or selling tickets at the box office. And that's what I say all the time. It's about putting asses in seats. A lot of fans don't understand that in the IWC. You just don't. It's putting asses in seats. It's not about going over, it's about getting over. As Flair got older, he had to take measures of safeguard to his spot. In response, people forged and fostered opinions about his backstage dealings, but how he handled political issues was no different than how Hulk Hogan or Dusty Rhodes did when it came to negotiating for better contracts or creative power. An argument could be made that Flair was much more willing to play ball under adverse conditions, even when a booking wasn't favorable to him. His WCW stint between 1999 and 2001 proved that. With respect to the 10,000 women he'd been with, Flair actually said 10,000 maybe. Flair was maybe the Wilt Chamberlain of pro wrestling. If you get the reference, Wilt the Stilt. The real number is obviously unknown, but his good looks, first-rate style, and fame made him a magnet for the opposite sex. He was hard to miss under any circumstance, and women who were wrestling fans had an idea of what to expect with the Nature Boy. Woo! What? It was no secret that Flair sought company on the road. As the NWA champion, he mostly traveled alone, and the schedule was often relentless. He told a reporter in 1982 that a regular traveling partner was enormously costly, upward of $8,000 a month for airfare. But he did have companionship from time to time. For instance, around 1982-83, a former beauty contestant from the Pittsburgh area named Janice McLonis traveled with Flair to New Zealand. Interestingly enough, an article appeared in the Pittsburgh Press on April 16, 1983, announcing the engagement of McLonis and Flair, saying a July 23rd wedding was planned. However, Flair married Beth on August 27, 1983, 7 years earlier. Reporter Robert Hodarin spoke with Flair about the abundance of women around pro wrestlers in the Mid-Atlantic area. Over the years, sports writers with behind-the-scenes access undoubtedly saw more than they revealed, as that side of the wrestling culture remained off-limits for public consumption. But it wasn't uncommon for wrestlers to have relationships with fans. Rats? What'd I say, Rats? What'd I say? No disrespect, man. Newspaper journalists and writers across many different platforms tended to appreciate Ric Flair, especially those who got to know him. In Charlotte, he was accepted as a cool mainstream celebrity, and he was casually mentioned in columns and articles. He'd quickly disarm reporters with politeness, and his low-key, engaging personality won people over. He was open with interviews, usually mixing reality with kayfabe to maintain wrestling secrets. Man, do I miss kayfabe. It's a lot of fun. It's what made the business work. But he always made an effort to be frank about the success and the hardships of the industry going back to very early in his career. In 1978, he appeared on Sportsline on WSOC AM in Charlotte and talked quietly about the travel, the money, the injuries, and the insecurity of pro grappling with host Phil Newman. Flair's stories and the way he presented himself during promos made it all the more real and intense. The words might have been bunk to promote a storyline, but Flair made it genuine, and he could shift gears when it was necessary to increase the dramatic effect. He was usually calm and collected off camera. In 1984, a reporter in a small town, North Carolina, wanted him to demonstrate his television talk. Flair hesitated for a moment and then asserted, every town and every person deserves a chance to stand face to face with sheer magnificence one time in their lives. It's my pleasure to provide that type of experience for the people of Marion tonight. Marion, North Carolina. He gave a wink to the journalist, and at the end, naturally, writers enjoyed putting their own spin on things for effect, we'll call it. Bob Wells of the Greensboro Daily News and Flair's sequined cape appeared to be a Liberace hand-me-down. Miami sports writer Tom Arcadian stated that Flair looked like a cross between Liberace and Lonnie Anderson and Broadway Joe Namath. How about that? Noted columnist Dave Barry referenced Flair's extravagant pre-match robe and said it was drag queen style. He also felt Flair used artificial forehead blood rather than razor blades. Now, you know that's a bunch of horse shit, right? Just goes to show you how the mainstream media and people out there that think they're in the know aren't. And that's why Dr. D. David Schultz said, don't call me fake. Get in the fucking ring and take a bump. Go do a match. Blade. And then tell me how fake it is. Hit the ring ropes. Take a body slam or a suplex. Let me put you in a side headlock or a full Nelson or hit you with a fucking folding chair. And then tell me. Until you've experienced it, don't open your fucking mouth. I apologize for the cussing. I get a little carried away here on Story Time. Again, my apologies. It's not my intent to cuss this much. But it happens. Mike Mooneyham and Tom Sorensen, two talented sports writers, probably knew Flair the longest and penned articles about the Nature Boy for decades. Pittsburgh journalist and radio host Mark Madden, who acknowledged Flair as the hero growing up, was another well-spoken yet sometimes controversial figure with a long-standing friendship with Flair. Wrestling pundit Bruce Mitchell, a longtime writer for the Pro Wrestling Torch, was a Flair expert, and his articles always made for interesting reading. Same went for historians Dick Bourne, David Chappelle, no, not the comedian, and Richard O'Sullivan, each of whom were not only dedicated to studying Flair's life and history, but sharing that information with the greater wrestling community. With mention of Mark Madden, it's notable that his association with Flair, and I apologize for the rumbling, stumbling, bumbling here, hit the skids in a public manner in March 2022. Following a several-month stint as co-host of the Woo Nation Uncensored podcast, other relationships over the course of Flair's life seemed to end in a similar manner. Due to business disagreements or personal reasons, and opinions about those situations, of course, vary, as I stated earlier, to the recent activities of the Nature Boy. Just giving you the facts here on Chaos Corner. As mentioned, Flair avoided scandal when he was the perennial world champion in the 80s and 90s. The darkest cloud, which in the opinion of some still casts a shadow over him, comes from the allegations surrounding the 2002 plane ride from hell. The old helicopter. Unfortunately, I was witness to the helicopter at the Boston Gardens back in the middle 90s. What'd I say, man? I'm just telling the truth. Raw dog. The helicopter. Okay. The situation made news at the time, but it didn't garner a wider exposure until the Dark Side of the Ring featured the story in 2021. So we're here in current times, 2021, 22, as we're in the middle of 24. On the flight, attendants offered her a version. One of the flight attendants offered her a version. Remember, I'm reading this for the first time. Although I lived it, I know about it, I know the history, bear with me. I'm a pretty damn good reader here on Storytime, huh? What do you think? Leave a comment as we're 55 minutes in on Chaos Corner. One of the flight attendants offered her a version of what happened in the episode, and it was a revelation to many viewers. Flair denied that the incident occurred. From all reports, it's obvious that things on the flight were out of control, the plane ride from hell, and there are forever going to be different accounts of what transpired. There is another unavoidable topic that has to be addressed, and it's the subject of racism, which I don't like to talk about here because everybody wants to play that card. And here on Chaos Corner and with the GOC personally, your race card has been declined. In an interview with Kayfabe Commentaries, former referee manager and the WWE Hall of Famer Teddy Long revealed that Flair used the N-word when talking to him. Racism was long plagued wrestling, and the sport has had to overcome a lot of prejudice to get where it is today. For decades, wrestling was rife with racial discrimination, and many old-school promoters of earlier generations portrayed characteristically biased and bigoted leaders of the industry. I can't speak against that because a lot of this is factual. And we've come a long way since then. We've definitely gone backwards in race relations and division because that's what the government wants. So people are jumping on that train. Don't fall for it. Whether you're white, black, brown, red, yellow, we're all the fucking same. We're human beings and we all bleed red. And the sooner you realize that, and we realize this, maybe we could save this fucking country. It came naturally to them and didn't deter audiences when promoting wrestlers of color. They used racial stereotypes to sell tickets. Same thing in the 70s with the Italians, the Hispanics, the Russians, the foreign adversaries, the Iron Sheik, Sergeant Slaughter. It goes on and on and on. Not only black, Hispanic, Italian, Irish, Polish, Russian. That's what the pro wrestling world did. Even during wars. If you remember Slaughter, the Sheik, so on and so forth. There's many examples not limited to just one race or culture. And I say that every time. And if you don't like it, you could change the channel. I'm giving you the facts. I'm not sugarcoating anything. That toxicity permeated throughout the sport, and some wrestlers didn't even try to hide their heinous views. Flair inherently heard racist language early in his career while traveling the circuit, and a few years later, he used words and phrases in mid-Atlantic promos that wouldn't stand up, rightly so, in today's world where everybody's a libtard and everybody has cancel culture. So I get it. So this is very, very true. And if I ever told you what I heard and what I was called on a daily basis, I spent 25 years behind the walls. I was a bounty hunter, a repo man, private security, a bodyguard, a private investigator, worked in all the clubs from pillar to post and coast to coast and border to border. And I was called the N-word on almost a daily basis. I want you to think about that and remember that as I give you the truth here on Chaos Corner. Me personally was called the N-word for over 20 years of my life. It's not just black. It's white, Hispanic, and the word and the phrase is used all the way around by a lot of different people in different cultures, men and women. They popularize it and glorify it in movies and in music. and then want to play the double indemnity card and double standards. No one should use it. I'm just giving you my viewpoints. And again, this is my channel. Don't come on here and tell me what to do. I don't tell you what to do. No matter who you are, what you claim to be, and where you're from. Remember who I am. Of course it wouldn't stand today, especially when they're trying to divide us. Cody Rhodes, in a podcast appearance, mentioned the shameful phraseology being used at the time, and Flair responded by saying, "Back then, you didn't think about it. Nobody was uncomfortable with it." Flair's point proved that racism was deeply embedded in wrestling culture. All in all, but he's right. He's not lying when he says what he says. He's not lying. Not saying it's not racist. I'm not. A lot of people accepted it, of all races. I'm just giving you the facts and the history. That's what you learn here. I'm not agreeing with it. I'm giving it to you straight. All in all, Ric Flair, the wrestling character, was best known for being a heel. He was celebrated for his innuendo, his racy dialogue, and PG-13 promos. More like rated R, rated X. Never did he claim to be wrestling's #1 role model, or frame his persona as a setting example for youth. Doesn't make it right, Flair. His matches were technical and athletic, but he was not the poster child for sportsmanship. He cheated to win. Once the Four Horsemen came around, they relied on a gang mentality to abuse their foes. Outside the ring, Flair chased women and enjoyed the nightlife. His conduct earned an adults-only rating at times, as he tried to garner laughs from the people around him. Mistake number 1, trying to impress other people. Worry about yourself and impressing yourself instead of others. Don't be a follower, be a leader. It's not about what other people think. Remember that. Be the best person that you can be. Treat people how you want to be treated. It's pretty simple. I can't get much more raw dog than on this episode of Chaos Corner. I wasn't role model material in any shape or form, regardless of how appropriate he was. It wasn't. Flair was just being Flair, which doesn't make it acceptable, in my opinion. A lot of people say, well, at least I admit how I am. Does that make it right and acceptable? I'll give you the credit for being honest. Doesn't make it right. His conduct wasn't always appreciated, and some of his contemporaries were not impressed by his antics. But Flair's meant different things to different people, and endless opinions of him have been expressed in interviews and print. He is probably the most critiqued and judged individual associated with wrestling today. And remember, before you judge someone, you better look in the mirror. We're all going to kneel someday, and we're all going to confess. It's just that simple. For decades, Flair lived the lifestyle he wanted to live, and his extreme conditioning and good health made it possible, although he has about, not 9 lives, about 13 lives. But the toll on his body was incredible, and in August 2017, his life came to a crashing halt. A complicated medical emergency put him in intensive care with a 20% chance to live. The Nature Boy needed a miracle to survive, and he got it. And I'm not going to get ahead of the story. I'm going to add a little bit to this because we know, I believe, 2022, Ric Flair's last match with Jay Lethal, a tag team bout where allegedly he passed out or had a heart attack in the ring. So he did more than survive. He got that miracle. And in 2024, he's still alive today. Obviously. So I hope you found this edition of Storytime here on the channel for Chaos Corner sobering reality, along with some entertainment. We're over an hour into this episode, but I wanted to prove some points in history to you, the fans, out here on this channel. Again, much love and respect. God bless you all. I love you all, and I mean that. We'll be back with more story time with your old buddy, the Guardian of Chaos, because I tell it like it is. I'll say that to say this. Don't you dare miss it.